And there we go, everyone. We are back again for another fantastic conversation on Friday Night Counter Attack. It's a bittersweet moment for me this week after Manchester United have been humiliated in the press and outside of the press. And I'm not even talking about Eric Ten Hag's press or Onana being pressed. I'm actually talking about Jadon Sancho not really impressing in this week with his talks on social media, which hasn't really helped. We're going to be getting stuck into that later on. We've got lots to talk about in terms of Tottenham Hotspur, in terms of Chelsea Football Club. We're going to be talking about two key players in the Premier League so far this season. We're going to be talking all about someone who I only see in my nightmares, and we are definitely going to be talking about the top 5 transfers in the summer transfer window this season. So what we're going to be continuing on today is we're going to have quite a relaxing podcast because it is the last podcast before the international break. And after this podcast, we've got 2 very special interviews coming up. So I'll tell you all about that later on in the podcast. And we've got a great bunch of people on today. Hopefully they turn up later. If they don't turn up later, it's perfectly fine because we've still got Travis and we've still got Lewis. And the way that I see it, they are more than enough for our very special episode 142 of Friday Night Counter Attack. So Travis, welcome back as always, my friend. It's good to have you on as a regular guest this time around. I mean, you're not even a guest; you're basically the co-host of our podcast. How are you doing this week after another fantastic weekend for Tottenham Hotspurs?
Buzzing, yeah, very happy. It's all looking rosy for Spurs at the minute, so it's a nice time to be a Spurs fan. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later in the pod.
Nah, that's absolutely fine, and we definitely will do, especially with your new number 10, who's been killing it so far this season, and definitely your new number 7 captain, who we'll be talking about later on. And I've got to welcome back Lewis from the Quickie podcast, Lewis, my boy from uni, Lewis, my boy from Miami, Mammies. Beware, Lewis will be coming back soon. I don't know if you are. That was just me purely speculating, but it's quite funny to say it. Lewis, it's good to see you back the first time this season. How are you doing? It's good to see you.
I'm very good, mate. I can't complain. It's good to be back, and I think this is my 3rd appearance, so my hat-trick appearance on a Friday Night Counter Attack.
That's a lie. You've been on 4 times.
Is it 4? I thought it was.
You've been on 4 times. It's not even counted as appearances now. I'm
doing myself dirty. 1 less cap.
Exactly. It's just one of those things. I was like, nah, you've definitely been on more than 3 times. And it's one of those things that first one was around this time last year anyway, beginning of the season, last season. So it's good to have you back on. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Chelsea Football Club, on our European football topics, and especially on our start bench sell topic that we've got later on. So without further ado, let's go into this week's topics. And this week's topics, we're going to start off with, before our main topic, we're going to be talking about our own kind of clubs. So Chelsea, Spurs, and Manchester United, of course. And we will be starting off with the positive for Travis and then the negatives from both Lewis and I. So Travis, talk to me about your win against Burnley on the weekend. Talk to me about how Ange Postecoglou has got the whole of the white side of North London raving with his style of play. Obviously, you had that. You were knocked out from the Carabao Cup against Fulham, but you come back in the shining light with some amazing players that have come through this season so far. Talk to me about what's gone right for Tottenham Hotspur and Ange Postecoglou so far.
It's been a great start. Undefeated after 4 games. I think after how poor we were, especially in the last few weeks of the season last season, I don't think anyone would have pictured us going into the international break unbeaten, especially having played Brentford and Man United, who Man United finished above us last season and Brentford finished 1 point behind.
This also happened with Nuno for anyone listening, so don't count your chickens just yet, Spurs fans.
Good point. Yeah, that is a good point. But no, it's the whole style of play and philosophy is exactly what Tottenham fans have been begging for basically since Pochettino left. We've tried it a different way with Jose and with Conte, and it didn't really work. And, if we're not going to win any trophies anyway, then we might as well play some beautiful football, which is what we're doing right now.
Absolutely. And what would be Ange Postecoglou's main type of style of play? So for someone who hasn't watched Tottenham Hotspur this season, only sees their YouTube highlights or sees them on Match of the Day and they've not watched a full 90 minutes of it, if you could give 3 takeaways for what's improved for Tottenham Hotspur from last season under Conte and Ryan Mason to under Ange Postecoglou this season?
I think the main thing I've noticed is the way that we try and win the ball back. It's a lot more proactive this season. When we lose the ball, you see 3 or 4 players immediately switch the mentality and get to running. Whereas last season under Conte, it was more a little bit sort of passive and let's sit deep and sit rigid. And, if we have a rigid structure, they won't be able to break us down. And it was just a case of, let's hope at some point that they make a mistake and we win the ball back. Whereas this season, it's a lot more proactive. If I was trying to describe his football, I would go with sort of aggressively attacking. There was a great quote that's come out from Ange this week where an interviewer asked him why he's so steadfast in his belief in attacking football. And he replied by saying, if you're a strict vegetarian, you don't pop into Mackey's because you're hungry, which I thought was just absolutely fantastic. But it does also absolutely sum up the style. I mean, in games this season, we've looked very open at times. And after the first goal against Burnley at the weekend, we did look a little bit in trouble for sort of 5 or so minutes after it. But we still stuck to the belief in the game plan, and we stuck to the plan, and it worked. And I think we did unsettle Burnley. We obviously went a goal down very early, and you could see the Burnley players were trying to sort of make us uncomfortable and press and make it difficult in our own half. But they were just playing through it, which is great to see. And the way that he's transformed the back line in 3 or 4 months to be able to do that. Because last season, if we had the ball in our own third with any of our back line with the ball at their feet, it was danger for us because they just weren't composed enough and didn't really know what to do with the ball. And it's all changed this season. That's another thing, a massive takeaway is how comfortable we are on the ball, and playing out from the back, breaking the press.
Absolutely, because with a lot of people, they've also kind of compared it to an upgrade on Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds United when they first came up from the Championship a couple of years ago as well. It's basically an upgrade in terms of plays, in terms of quality of continuation of the pressing as well. And I noticed that against Manchester United, especially in that second half as well. But Lewis, I kind of wanted to ask you with this as well. Obviously, we're going to get into Chelsea in a bit, but with Tottenham Hotspur, can you see them threatening that top 4 position? Or is it going to be same old Tottenham? They're going to sack their manager after a couple of months because they've had a great honeymoon period with the new manager like they did under Nuno Espirito Santo? Or is there cause for concern for opposition or opposition teams, really, Lewis?
I'd say there is for a bit, but I'd agree with Trav with the Pochettino thing when he was at Tottenham. I think it's a lot of nice football with nothing really to show for it at the end of the day with that team, with Poch. I know they got to a Champions League final, but ultimately it's worth nothing. And I just think that Ange is a very good fit for Spurs at this moment in time. He's good in a rebuild. He's very harsh. He seems to definitely have planned for life without Kane, and it's obviously to everyone's detriment who they played so far. They absolutely spanked Burnley the other day, and rightfully so. Son was on fire. You couldn't hit a barn door last year. Like, so many players looked like brand new players who just weren't getting a look in or were elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it's a really good fit, but I really wouldn't be surprised if it's Spurs have had like a hard run of fixtures and they're going for a hard patch. But I think they will get Europe, but I don't think it'll be the Champions League.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's looking forward for Tottenham Hotspur now as well, because they're out of the Carabao Cup. They've got no distractions until January with the FA Cup, and until then they can treat every weekend like a cup final, really. And I'm pretty sure for Travis, for yourself as well, like you said, it's going to be a fun ride with watching this attractive style of play, this attractive style of football as well. So it's going to be fun for Tottenham Hotspur. It's not going to be fun for Chelsea at the moment, with obviously your former Tottenham manager Mauricio Pochettino at the helm. It's not been a great start in the bottom half of the table at the moment, Lewis, and having an embarrassing loss to Nottingham Forest at home, with former Manchester United winger Ante Elanga scoring the winner in the second half. How do we fix this with Chelsea? Do Chelsea kind of know their first 11? Do you have a feeling of what their first 11 should be after the international break, or is there cause for concern already with the amount of players that Chelsea have to try and fit into the starting 11, Lewis?
I don't think it's cause for concern. I think that the easy thing to do would be moan about injuries, but everyone gets them. And unfortunately, the guy that we were ultimately going to put up front in Nkunku is out until January. So everyone's saying, oh, they spent $1 billion and they've not bought a 9. No, we did buy a 9. He's just injured. So I think it's just quite a lazy narrative. And we did buy Nicholas Jackson as well. And in this particular game, he missed a goal that I like to think that I would have scored. I like to think that my mum would have scored that goal, to be honest with you. So sorry, Jackson. But stuff like that, I've seen so many people describe our performance against Forest with 2 shots on target at home, and that's just unacceptable for for Chelsea against no matter who you're playing. We could be Man City, and the fans will expect more than that. So I just think that it was a very immature performance that in the long run, performances like that will mature us, because the average age of our squad now is 22 and a half, and we've completely transformed it. We've signed so many players that are under the age of 25, and a few that you said like about the starting 11 that are going to come straight into our team. I think Romeo Lavia is definitely going to come straight into that team for Conor Gallagher. He's going to sit at the base. You'll free up Caicedo and Enzo, and it'll be a completely different Chelsea. And he's only 19. So I think that with Spurs as well, not having European football, the same applies for Chelsea. That time on the training ground will only make them better. And Trav, you can testify to Pochettino's record with young players, even at Spurs, that players that you think, how is he playing this good? And then Poch leaves and you're like, they're not actually that good.
Travis, do you have any examples of that when Spurs had Pochettino at the helm?
To be fair, bang on, hit the nail on the head. Pretty much every Tottenham player after Poch left had a massive drop off. we were never, we never hit the same heights again, did we? Dele Alli's a massive example. Came in and, relatively unknown, 5 million quid from MK Dons, and obviously just, set the league on fire. And then after Poch left, where is he now? I think that is a massively good point. He does work really well with young players, and I think they have got the right guy, Chelsea. I do think that they'll be all right. I don't think this is necessarily the season where they'll be successful. I think there'll be a bedding-in period, and Poch needs a bit of time. But like you say, Lewis, you've got players to come back from injury. He's got to find his best 11 as well. It's difficult to find your best 11 as a new manager at any club, but especially when they've signed as many players as Chelsea have over the last 12 months. It's very, very difficult. But I think given this season as a bedding-in period, we'll see a much, much better Chelsea next year. And like you say, without Europe, there's a lot of time on the training ground to really, really study that squad and see who the key players are and who are going to be the key players in the future. So I wouldn't be too worried if I was a Chelsea fan. I think there's going to be some difficult times ahead. I think you'll probably have a few embarrassing days, and it'll get worse probably before it gets better. But I think there's light at the end of the tunnel for sure.
Travis, with Reece James and Chilwell injured, so just the player who you think will step up for Chelsea this season from an opposition point of view? Because I want to hear Lewis's thoughts, but I'd rather get yours, obviously, from the outside perspective.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Two of the best fullbacks in the league, especially Reece James. You'd like to think someone like Ian Maatsen would take this opportunity with both hands. Obviously, looks like he rejected a move to Burnley on the final day of the window because he wants to fight for his place at Chelsea. And like I say, with Chilwell being out injured, it's a huge opportunity for him. There's not going to be any better time to really stake his claim on the starting 11. So I could see him being a major player this season and having a bit of a breakout season. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what Lewis thinks about that.
Definitely. Lewis, any thoughts on Maatsen and any other player coming out to try and stake a claim in the starting 11 for Chelsea?
Yeah, Maatsen's a great example, but I think that it was almost a nearly a series of unfortunate events really for Ian Maatsen. If Cucurella goes to United, it's not even talk of him going to Burnley at all. But the fact that Chelsea played him in the League Cup and cup tied him really upset United, and that's what made him move on to Reguilon really, they wanted to have their emergency left back for all competitions, and fair enough, but at the end of the day, he's our player, so it doesn't really matter. But Maatsen was going to go for 32 million. I think he was one of our best players in pre-season. He predominantly played either on the wing or in centre midfield, which just shows his versatility. He got player of the month, I think, at least once last year for Burnley. He's ready to take that step up, similar to, like we said, with Reece James. So, yeah, Ian Maatsen's a great player. And if he was asking me someone else, I think with Poch, who he'll probably, to be honest with you, he always talks up Jackson, but I really think long-term, he'll get so much out of Enzo. And I really think that he'll make Enzo such a really big player for us, because he's basically the vice-captain now. Chilwell's the vice at the minute with, obviously, us get it passed around, and Silva, who would usually take it, passes it straight to Enzo because he doesn't need it. So I think a Poch will make him a monster.
I think that first game against Liverpool was great to see how he was playing as the number 8 and how he had that all the time in the world, basically, it seemed like with Enzo Fernandez. But It's just about how everyone fits in with the side, because does Lavia start over Caicedo? Do you play a 4-3-3 now? Do you get the best out of some of your wingers like Maduake coming back in, Sterling on the left, who we'll talk about later, Mudryk as well, because Mudryk is still someone who spent quite a lot of money on, but he's yet to settle in. And he had a really good start to last season with Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League, scoring against Celtic, challenging Real Madrid as well. So there's a lot of people we need to build back onto this form as well. And it's just with these injuries, it's going to be a blessing for some of the players still in the squad as well. They can work during the international break if they're away, or they can work during their time at Cobham as well, if they're going to stay at home from the international break as well. But it's good to see, and hopefully there'll be, for Lewis's sake, there'll be more successes for Chelsea later on this season, and especially for Mauricio Pochettino. It's not been very successful for Erik ten Hag this weekend after a damning defeat at the Emirates. 3-1 is what I predicted last week, and Travis, unfortunately, I was right. I hate being right, but I was right about losing to Arsenal Football Club. And you were right as well, Travis, to be fair. You did say Marcus Rashford was going to score, and he did score. He's the only one who looks like scoring now, unfortunately. And it's quite sad to see our Man United looking like a counter-attacking side who kind of have to play in moments and can't really pick up a style of play. One of our best passes on the weekend was our goalkeeper, Andre Onana, but he wasn't that great as a goalkeeper from what I really saw on the weekend. Wasn't really impressed with the... everyone says about the distribution. It's fine, but there's some times when you just have to pass the ball long, you have to get rid of it. You have to stop playing around, because there will be a quicker striker, more aggressive striker, i.e. a Nicholas Jackson, an Erling Haaland up the pitch sometime, who will be progressing onto this goalkeeper, and this goalkeeper will be making mistakes. But the obvious talking point for Manchester United, besides the offside, which we're not going to go into because we never talk about VAR on this podcast, and there's a reason we don't, thank goodness for that, is the whole Jadon Sancho and Erik ten Hag situation that's been carrying on for the last few days as well. And me personally, I'm on Erik ten Hag's side. I don't like the fact that a lot of players at Manchester United for the last 10 years think they can run the asylum. They think they can show off in terms of their attitude and think in terms of they are better than the club. Jadon Sancho's in the top 3 earners of Manchester United this season. He's got a mega contract at Manchester United for another 3 years, I believe, which is insane. And he's not proved anywhere better than, to be blunt with you, Anthony Elanga had at Manchester United. And Anthony Elanga was an academy player. And Jadon Sancho was someone who you bought for £75 million, and he can't find a place in this team. And the example I'm going to give is last season, there was a player also at Man United called Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who didn't get a sniff in until after the World Cup. He didn't complain, he didn't moan, he didn't spout about it on social media, he didn't whine about it. When Diogo Dalot was injured at right back, Tyrone Malacia played right back instead of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and Brandon Williams was on the bench for Manchester United. Did Aaron Wan-Bissaka sulk? No, he carried on. He carried on working hard. He knew he wanted to get in favour of the manager. And now there's talks of Aaron Wan-Bissaka getting a new long-term contract with how he's impressed the manager, how he's improved his fitness, how he's improved his attacking play as well. If only Jadon Sancho could take a leaf out of Aaron Wan-Bissaka's book, because I found it quite embarrassing. And it is really embarrassing when a player tries to challenge a manager who's not been very good. If it was Marcus Rashford, if it was Bruno Fernandes, if, for example, it was even Casemiro challenging Erik ten Hag, people would be like, oh yeah, maybe he's got a point. But Jadon Sancho is a bigger name than he's a bigger player. And today, I'm wearing the Jadon Sancho shirt, where he had the 30 goal and assist season for Borussia Dortmund. And it's quite embarrassing to say that it could look like the end of the line for Jadon Sancho. I don't want it to be. I want him to come back, because Erik ten Hag gave him that time away after the World Cup and before the February and March time when he came back. So he had all the time in the world, and his disrespected the manager publicly. That's my mini passive rant over. But Travis, I'm going to take it over to you. Where do you stand on this Jadon Sancho situation? Not so much for Erik ten Hag's point of view, but how does this player get back into a team? How does he get back into even getting back into a first team squad? Because Gareth Southgate clearly didn't want him at the World Cup. He wasn't fancied at the Euros before as well. There have been other wingers and attackers that have been in the squad since Jadon Sancho's omission. Where does Jadon Sancho go from here?
It's just one of several calamities at Man United at the minute. The club just seems to be an absolute mess. Obviously, this is the latest in a long line of recent, controversies, shall we say. You've got the Glazer ownership. We've got, he who shall not be named. There's all this stuff about Anthony at the moment as well. It's just
He's going to
it's
be the
just
second.
crazy.
He's going to be the second right winger, left foot right winger, who's not going to be playing anymore.
Yeah, there's gonna be two guys called He Who Shall Not Be Named at Man United. But no, it's really difficult to see a way forward. I mean, if you come out and publicly disrespect your manager the way that Sancho has done, there's surely no way back. It would take, I don't even know what it would take. It takes something ridiculous for Ten Hag to reintegrate him into plans now, surely. But you make a good point in that he's almost, buried himself already, Ten Hag, in this discussion because he almost doesn't have an alternative. Anthony has his problems at the minute, and even before these issues that are coming to light at the moment, his form has been disastrous. So, Anthony's not an ideal replacement for Sancho. They've sold Elanga. Who else do you actually play on the right hand side? Garnacho looks way more comfortable on the left.
We play Marcus Rashford out position and we play bad football because the only player that actually wants to attack is going to be played out of position, which goes to show how bad it can be at Man United, which is really, really bad.
It's a scary time, I think, for United fans. They seem to be just absolutely a mess, and I don't know what the solution is. Usually when there's things like this going on in football, I like to think that in my head I've got an idea of what the way forward is and what the best idea is to resolve it. But with United, what do you even do? I mean,
once upon a time, there was a time when Steven Gerrard wanted to leave Liverpool and he wanted to move to lose team Chelsea to win trophies, win Premier Leagues, and compete at the highest level. Then there was a time at Liverpool Football Club where he was then threatened by his adoring fan base at his home and threatened in the post by some people posting bullets and death threats to his home. And because Rafa Benitez couldn't twist his mind, these so-called fans twisted his mind as well. And a couple of days later, after stating that he wanted to leave Liverpool, there was a picture of Rafa Benitez and Steven Gerrard shaking hands, being like, yeah, we've squashed the beef, we're moving forward. And then Liverpool won the Champions League that season as well, which goes to show how bad it can be. But I don't think Man United fans really care about showing death threats to Jadon Sancho as well. But Lewis, I wanted to ask you, moving forward with Jadon Sancho, have you seen enough from him in the Premier League to warrant a valid reason? Oh yeah, he's not turned up properly. He had a good cameo against Wolves, impact in the second half. But have you seen him enough since he's been to England? Because everyone goes, oh yeah, he was great at Dortmund, but we've seen so many players great in Germany. Timo Werner was great in Germany, for goodness sake. We've seen so many players come from different countries, but unfortunately, when they can't do it in the Premier League, their value then goes down quite a lot. How do we see Jadon Sancho moving forward if you haven't seen anything good from him for 3 seasons now?
I think that ultimately Sancho is, well, he's probably past his last straw now. I think that the relationship is probably too far gone now, and he'll probably warm the bench and not make match day squads, and he'll slowly be frozen out. But I think that the only thing that can revive him is a loan to maybe back to Dortmund, where he's comfortable, but long term, does that do him any good going back to his comfort zone? I think ultimately I would like to see him in a league like Serie A, where the league is a little bit more slower and he can use the little explosive pace that he has and really affect the team there. And like I said, the expectations won't be nearly as much as it is at United, and the wages are just mental for what's actually been shown. And the only real note, again, as a neutral, the massive thing that I can really think that Sancho ever did, I just remember when he sat someone down when he played Liverpool and he just rolled the ball into net. And I was just thinking then, as we're on the subject, there's not been enough of those moments for someone of the price tag and the expectation of, let's be honest, he was one of the most sought after wonder kids in world football when United got him, and loads of teams were after him. So I just don't understand how a player like that goes bad overnight. And I think it must have to be something to do with like his mental health, and he's got some demons either in his personal life or I don't know. But I just think that ultimately he needs to change locations, and there's nothing up with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was putting up Messi numbers. He was competing in the top 5 goals and assists for 3 seasons running at Borussia Dortmund. It goes to show, top 5 in Europe, by the way, not in the Bundesliga, but top 5 in Europe. And it goes to show how a player can fall from grace after one crazy move. And it was a move that a lot of Man United fans thought it worked well, but clearly it hasn't so far, and we've got to see how Erik ten Hag moves on from this after the international break, which will be insane. But yeah, as it's now the international break, it's the best time possible to be talking about the summer transfer window that we've just seen, and with the £2 billion and more spent over this summer, I think it's time to kind of ask the both of you who have been some of your favorite signings and who are some of your signings to watch. So we've all got 5 each. We've all kind of got to go through goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, wingers, and strikers as well. So we'll go in order so it's easier for our listeners and definitely easy for our editors as well. So, Lewis, I'll start with you. Have there been any goalkeepers that you've been looking at in terms of a transfer that you thought, oh, this would be a good move for them? They're actually going to improve their self now as well? Or is there not many goalkeepers that have kind of improved with their move so far?
The only one of note that I can really think of, no goalkeeper, a bit of a spoiler alert, has made the top 5 in my list, but the one that comes straight to my mind is James Trafford, who now plays for Burnley. He moved from Man City. And I just think that coming off the back of winning the Euros with England without conceding a goal, it's the next logical step for his development, and it's time to play big boy football. So I think ultimately he'll do well. And if Burnley, God forbid, go down for Burnley fans, I think that he'll have plenty of suitors from the Premier League and abroad.
Definitely. And for the best defender being signed, Travis, I'll go with you for this one. There's a defender that you thought, you know what, he's going to have a good time at this new club, he's going to suit the system. Who's the kind of player that's come to mind for you?
I think I would have to go with Gvardiol joining Man City. I think he's probably the most, or was until he moved to City, the most sought after centre-back in world football. I think if you gave any club a blank check and said, go and sign a centre-back with this blank check, I think he would have been probably top of the list for 90% of the clubs. And it's just City improving again year on year on year, isn't it? So, yeah, very good signing.
Cancelo leaving as well, Gavardio could be that left centre-back and Ake could be left-back or vice versa as well, which would be very useful for Pep Guardiola moving forward, developing another young centre-back into an all-action defender, as you see with a lot of Pep Guardiola defenders nowadays.
Yeah, I would agree. He seems to fit perfectly into that system. He's very versatile, tactically versatile as well. So, yeah, I think he'll be a great sign. I think by the end of the season, I think we'll be talking about him as one of the best centre-halves in the league and the world.
Yeah. That's an easy prediction because Pep Guardiola always does that with his players. He doesn't really sign many duds because a lot of players, when they sign for Manchester City, everyone's like, oh yeah, they flopped in their first season, but then their second season, they become a monster. And when they become a monster, they become unstoppable. And that may happen with Gvardiol. If he doesn't have a good season this season, fair enough, but next season he's going to turn up. And that's what a lot of players do at Manchester City, unfortunately for me. Midfielder, I'm going to take this one. It's the easiest one out there. Jude Bellingham, Borussia Dortmund to Real Madrid, £105 million. Scored the winner on the weekend as well at his new home, the Santiago Bernabeu 2.0 or 4.0, however many times I've updated it. Easy one. We spoke about him glowingly last week, Travis, as well. So I'll let you pick winger to watch from the best winger that's been the best new winger, basically, from the summer signings. Who you go for, Travis?
I'm going to go for Diaby joining Aston Villa. Everything, I mean, I've got a smile on my face just talking about him. Everything I've seen from this guy so far, he looks like he's going to be an absolute bona fide superstar. He's just got everything. He's so quick. On the ball, he's so tight as well. He doesn't really lose the ball very often. And he's been productive as well. He's been popping up with goals and assists already. He looks like he's been playing in that Villa team under Emery for 10 years. Such a professional looking player. I think by the end of the season, there's going to be some real massive interest in him. He just looks like he's got everything for me.
I mean, PSG wanted Moussa Diaby earlier this season. So did the club in Saudi Arabia. I haven't remembered their name respectively, but Aston Villa were the first to contact him after the season ended. So he honoured that agreement and he went to Aston Villa to work under Unai Emery and potentially competing in the Europa Conference League. So fair play, Moussa Diaby. And when I went to watch Bayern Leverkusen last season, a lot of their fans were saying he's just as quick as Mbappe. And I was like, yeah. Then I went on and watched the game, and then he was very, very quick. And I've seen both Mbappe live and Diaby live. And they're both very quick players to watch and appreciate as well. So I'm looking forward to more Moussa Diaby this season in the Premier League. Lewis, how about you for best striker, best signing for a striker this season? Will it be in the Premier League or is it elsewhere in Europe?
That's a good question. I think that it depends what your niche is, Hamz. And if your niche is saving money, then I've got a striker for you here, and it's Marcus Thuram, who's
My
gone.
guy.
He formerly played at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He now plays for Juventus. He can play up front or as an inside forward off the left. And again, value for money. I think this is such a good signing. I think he adds a lot to that Juventus team. He adds a lot of dynamism going up front. And definitely they're going to rely heavy on him because Vlahovic can't hit a barn door.
Vlahovic plays for Juventus. So Lautaro Martinez, did you mean?
What?
Yeah, he's joined Inter, hasn't he?
He's joined
Yeah.
Inter.
Oh, sorry. I do apologize. Yeah, Lautaro.
Lautaro Martinez. But yeah, Marcus Thuram is a firecracker of a striker. And the fact that he wasn't sought after more by PSG, by Manchester United, by anyone this summer goes to show people's scouting departments aren't really earning their money properly. And Inter Milan have got a killer up front, and they replaced Romelu Lukaku in the right way. They replaced Edin Dzeko in the right way. And with Marcus Thuram, I'm actually so excited to watch Inter Milan more this season because some of their new players will actually help him become a world beater, in my opinion. I think he's going to help Serie A become a lot more exciting than a lot of other leagues in their title races, respectively, this season. So shout out Marcus Thuram. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'm a big fan of Marcus Thuram, especially from his time at Borussia Mönchengladbach as well. You mentioned niche, Lewis. I'm going to give everyone a niche just before we move on to our next topic, is best value for money signing. So it can be anywhere in the pitch, anywhere in the world. You can even say Lionel Messi if you want to Inter Miami, but I'm not going to go down that route. Best value for money signing, Travis. Let's start with you. Where in the world do you think who's got the best bargain so far?
I'm very tempted to be very biased here and swing for Maddison, but yeah, do you know what I'm going to? I'm going to say James Maddison. My alternative and what I was going to say up until now was Alexis McAllister, because I think that everybody was so surprised when this kind of secret release clause that nobody knew about popped up and Liverpool grabbed him for 35 million. It's just an absolute bargain considering people were talking about him going for potentially triple that. But with Maddison, I just think that he will transform Tottenham in a way that McAllister won't do for Liverpool. I think he'll be a great signing, McAllister, don't get me wrong, but Maddison, I think, really will be the difference for Spurs this season. And for 40 million, it's a lot of money, 40 million, but it's a bargain in the sense that he will be that guy for Tottenham, and we're seeing that already. I'm really excited to see what we can achieve with him at the club, to be fair.
Nicely done. Travis, you've gone for James Maddison as your number one and McAllister as your second one. Do you think Alexis McAllister is at the right club? Because Dominic Szoboszlai is the one kind of more of an attacking player so far for Liverpool, and he's thriving. He's doing really well. Is it a change of role from what you've seen at Alexis McAllister for Liverpool, or not so much? What do you think?
I think you're quite right. I think Szoboszlai has been a bit more impressive so far. I think he's probably taken to life at Liverpool a bit quicker than McAllister has. But I think you've got to remember when McAllister started becoming integrated into the Brighton first team, took him a little bit of time to adapt and get up to speed. I think if we give him that time as well at Liverpool, he'll show just how good he can be. And we've also got to remember that Liverpool have transformed their midfield over the course of the summer. It's not like he's coming into a settled midfield of, Henderson and Fabinho plus him, or Thiago and Fabinho plus him. It's been massively changed, and they've got to find that dynamic between himself, Szoboszlai, and then Gravenberch or Endo, whoever that third midfielder is. And I think eventually, again, given a few weeks, they'll settle into a bit of a rhythm and a bit of a way of playing together, and we'll see the best out of all three of them because they're all fantastic talents, aren't they?
Definitely. And I found out today that actually their new midfielder, Endo, he's also a football blogger as well. So we'll talk about that next time we're on the podcast, because we'll get a bit more information on the fact that a professional footballer blogs about football, which is quite funny, actually. So
that is cool, to be fair.
We'll talk about that next time, Travis. It'll be fun. Lewis, again, I like your topic of having a niche transfer. But yeah, best value for money transfer. Are you going to Union Berlin? Because they've had a couple of niche transfers for their first upcoming Champions League campaign, or have I completely gone left field with you there?
You know what? You've gone a little bit left field. However, I do think that Union Berlin are one to definitely keep your eye on. I remember when the pandemic happened and no one could really watch anything but the Bundesliga. My podcast, That's the Way the Cookie Crumbles, did cover the Bundesliga for about 2 months straight. and one of our co-hosts, Stan's team, was Union Berlin. So it's really funny to see how far they've come in such a short amount of time. Obviously, like you said, in the Champions League, and Brandon Aronson, I'd say Datro Fofana off the top of my head, and they're just a couple of the exciting players that they've got. But we're going to France, Hamz. We're going to Paris specifically, and the player I would like to pick for my bargain is Sergio Asensio, who
Free transfer.
He's gone for a free to Paris Saint-Germain from Real Madrid, and he was incredible at the weekend. They absolutely battered Lyon on Sunday, and I just think for value for money, for someone with so much experience, he's won so much in the game already. It just adds a lot of pedigree to that PSG team, with Spanish-speaking manager as well and Spanish national manager Luis Enrique. It's just a great combination, and very smart business from Paris, Hamz, I think, who have moved away from the Hollywood model, getting rid of Messi, getting rid of Neymar, and potentially keeping Mbappe. So it's very smart from Paris, when in the past they've definitely not been smart.
Yeah, also getting rid of Sergio Ramos from this contract as well. So a lot of their failed Galacticos, I would say, have kind of moved on, and it's all about Mbappe and how they can build a team around him. We saw how Cristiano Ronaldo had his team built around him at Real Madrid. We've seen Lionel Messi's team built around him. If they're going to build a team around a player, it's got to be the up-and-coming superstar who can actually turn up in big games, who can threaten opposition just by a feint of a body or a drop of a shoulder. And that's what Kylian Mbappe has done. But I'm looking forward to seeing Asensio in the starting role. And we've been seeing that a lot because their front three was quite crazy on the weekend. Because you've got Mbappe on the left, then you've got two right midfielders, Asensio and Dembele. But Asensio then plays as a false nine, allowing Mbappe to drift into the middle. So they're all over the place, and it's a fun type of chaos from PSG because they know they can do that in Ligue 1. So it's going to be fun to see how they do in this season's Champions League, especially with their group stage. It's going to be crazy seeing them against Newcastle, if I remember correctly. Newcastle, AC Milan, Dortmund is their group of death, which will be great fun for Kylian Mbappe. Right, my bargain is going to be a very boring one. I'm going to go for Harry Kane to Bayern Munich, because I definitely think Harry Kane to Bayern Munich for 1 year left on his contract for around £100 million for one of the best strikers we've seen in the last 7 years in world football, for £100 million like that is crazy. And I'm looking.
Can you call that a bargain?
I can call that a bargain because I'm being a bit chaotic today. Because we've seen all these £100 million players: Dembele, Coutinho. Who else we've seen? We've seen Lukaku for £100 million. We've seen João Felix for £100 million. We've seen so many of these players fail after being £100 million. Harry Kane is the established product. He scored 2 goals already in the Bundesliga so far this season. He didn't score on the weekend in their tight game against Borussia Mönchengladbach as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses in the Champions League. I'm looking forward to seeing if he can take his leadership role and settle into the German champion side as well, and becoming this mainstay number 9. We want him all to succeed. From my point of view, I want him to succeed massively at Bayern Munich, but just not against Man United in the home leg, and especially the away leg in match day 1 of the Champions League. But yeah, my best value for money signing, I'm gonna be left field as well. I'm gonna go for Christian Pulisic to AC Milan, free transfer as well. We've spoken about Kamada already on the podcast, Travis. So instead of going for Kamada again, who scored against Napoli, I'm going to go for Christian Pulisic, because I think Christian Pulisic may have finally found a home at AC Milan where he's appreciated, where he's going to be playing as one of the star players, because in his mind, he's a star player of his national country. So his national team, for his country. So he's going to have to make sure he's going to be the star every week for AC Milan. They're going to be in European football again. They are going to be looking to compete in Serie A once again. And when you've got Christian Pulisic and Rafael Leao on either side of the wing with Olivier Giroud up front, it's going to be very difficult for Serie A defenses to take on this attack, really. And Lewis, obviously, you've spoke glowingly about Christian Pulisic in the past, and obviously quite negatively, more so negatively on our podcast than on your podcast, The Cookie Crumbles, as well. But talk to us about what Christian Pulisic can actually bring to this AC Milan side.
So with Christian Pulisic, there's the whole question of, can he stay fit? And ultimately, the answer is no for his time at Chelsea. And if he can keep himself fit at AC Milan, I mentioned it before about Serie A being slightly slower, and maybe for players that aren't really cutting it in the Prem, they can go there and maybe look a little bit better than they are. A la Romelu Lukaku, prime example of someone that does that. And
he can still do it at Roma. You never know.
Exactly.
What is it? 4th time's the charm in a different country now for Romelu Lukaku? It's crazy.
Yeah, he's been around, and I just think that if we're on about Lukaku, it really wouldn't surprise me if he had a really good season with Jose and Roma, and I think it's the third time that they've linked up now, Hamz.
Yeah, they did it. Chelsea? They've done it at Man United.
Now
And
Roma.
now that Roma, which is crazy. Another Roma player I'm looking forward to seeing is Hossein Aouar, who's gone on a free transfer from Lyon to Roma as well. But we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there with Roma this season. Speaking of Roma, actually we're going nowhere near Roma. It's this week's start bench sell. So we're not going to do the scout Hamz because we spoke about so many different players there, and it's the international week this week, so you can have a break off from my scouting reports. This week's start bench sell. Start bench sell is all about our three teams' players. So we've got one from Man United, one from Spurs, and one from Chelsea. They're all left wingers. They are great left wingers, and they have been great wingers in the Premier League and across Europe and in world football as well, on the biggest stage of all, in European football and in international football. One of our guests who's meant to be on, Danny, I know you're going to be listening to this later on. You avoided this question when I asked you this in public regarding Heung-min Son and Marcus Rashford, and he just avoided it completely. So I'm like, yeah, cool. When you're next on the podcast, we'll do this one. He was meant to be on, and has bailed on us. As Gareth bailed on us, which is embarrassing. So Chelsea, Raheem Sterling is not Raheem Sterling of old, but everyone's saying, oh yeah, Raheem Sterling back. Lewis, what can you kind of tell us about Raheem Sterling's start to the season so far before we get into start bench sell of Raheem Sterling, Marcus Rashford, and Heung-min Son? Is he looking like his best self again?
Definitely. I think that Pochettino said to Raheem Sterling what every fan was saying to each other last year was, why isn't he taking anybody on? Like, Raheem Sterling is known for taking players on and being explosive and being tricky and just being very dynamic and putting fullbacks on the back foot. And he just wasn't doing that under Potter or under Lampard. And he just looks an absolute shadow of himself. And it says it all that he had such a subpar season in terms of his very high standards, because he's an absolute winner. Let's not get it wrong. And he still was our top goal scorer last year, Raheem Sterling, which it's mad to say. So I think so far he's been Chelsea's best player. I think he looks like Sterling of old. He's taking more people on. He's getting more crosses into the box. And I'll give you a little stat, Hamz, that Chelsea have created the most big chances in the league, and we've also missed the most big chances in the league. So I think that, again, mentioned about the training ground before, I think let us cook. Let us cook for a little bit. It'll get worse before it gets better, but let us cook.
You're starting on the appetizer, and you've got Gordon Ramsay throwing them back in the kitchen, throwing them against the wall. It's raw. That's what Gordon Ramsay is saying. And someone who was a little bit raw last season was Heung-min Son, Travis, as well. And it's looking like the captaincy has elevated his game a lot more as well. One good story I've seen from Heung-min Son this week is he's been calling a lot of the younger Tottenham players on international duty. And Papa Sarr was one of the players who posted about it on social media, having a FaceTime with Heung-min Son, who was helping him getting settled into his international camp, making sure he's eating properly. And that's a nice story to hear about Heung-min Son. Even though I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there's a player I only see in my nightmares. And Heung-min Son faking an injury against Scott McTominay in lockdown football is always in my nightmares. So I'm not one of Heung-min Son's biggest fan. That was a nice moment. And I'm always the biggest hater of Heung-min Son, because again, he's one of those players who has a nice reputation, but is still not a good player to kind of play against. But are we seeing the best of Heung-min Son as El Capitano now, Travis?
Yeah, I think what I would say about Son is I think there's a good chance when he leaves Tottenham that he'll go down as my favourite player of all time for the club. And I think there's a lot of Spurs fans who'd say the same. And he's really showing why that is this season as captain. He does seem to have taken that responsibility on his shoulders very well. He didn't start the season too well. He's not been setting the world alight, but obviously Burnley at the weekend, he was on fire. 3 very, very well taken goals. The first one especially, the finish was sublime, just dinking it over the goalkeeper. And like you say, he's been a real role model to the younger players in the squad. We have got a very, very young squad now. Players like Sarr, Adogi, they're going to need help to settle into this new team, this new system, and having someone who's so professional and such a good player as well always helps to be a good role model. Someone like Son. Will
can I interject and can I say, is this the first start bench sale we've had in a while, Travis, where all 3 of these players are not good role models, but exceptional role models for what they've done outside of football and inside of football as well, and how they've carried themselves? Would you agree or disagree, Travis?
I would 100% agree with that, actually. Rashford obviously is off the pitch work. Sorry, there's nothing I can say about it that hasn't already been said.
Your neighbors have been well fed, Travis. My neighbors have been well fed. They're okay right now. They're not going through our bins. They're not going through our bins or anything. They're okay. We're good. We're good in that respect.
Yeah, nice. I would actually really agree in terms of Sterling too. I think there was a period where the media really were on Sterling's back and trying to paint him as this negative character, which he really isn't. You can see among the Chelsea squad, he is a role model and he is one of the leaders. And I think everything that I see of Sterling outside of football, he looks like a terrific guy. He just seems really sort of high on life. Like he loves everything that he does, and that's always a great thing to see as well when you see footballers genuinely happy, playing with a smile on the face and enjoying what they're doing. So Sterling's a great example of that too. I would 100% agree that they were all great role models in their own respects. Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, enough of the niceties. We have to get into our start bench. So everyone's got their well-deserved praise and fair play to all of them. They've been amazing left wingers, at least for Raheem Sterling and Son Heung-min for the last 8-9 years, respectively, in the Premier League. Marcus Rashford since around 2016 when he made his debut. But yeah, let's just get into it. So Heung-min Son, Premier League appearances, 408. He scored 160 goals in the Premier League and 82 assists. Raheem Sterling with 352 Premier League appearances, 117 goals and 59 assists. And Marcus Rashford with 243 appearances, 77 goals and 38 appearances. Lewis, being the guest today, you have the opportunities to start off our ever controversial but ever entertaining start, bench, sell. Let's go, my friend.
Okay, this is a lot of pressure, so I hope you know that. I'm going to go off the premise on current form because
no, we don't do current form. We do all time.
All time. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So it can be Sterling at Man City, it can be Heung-min Son at Hamburg, it can be Marcus Rashford in the academy, whatever it is, but all time, not just 2023-24 season. So we're okay.
Oh, this makes it so much easier. So starting, I'm going to go for Raheem Sterling. I think for partially mentioned on what I said before, he's a winner. I think this year you will see him take on that leadership role. It's already said that he's very close to Cole Palmer anyway, and when he was at Man City, he took him under his wing there. So I think you'll see Sterling take on that role and gradually work up the hierarchy in terms of one of the big guys in the dressing room. And apart from last season where he was subpar, he's ever so reliable. And I think if you're looking not just for his clubs, even for England, he's been so reliable at major tournaments. And even when there was times, I think it was Euro 2020, or when they were saying, he shouldn't have gone, and he absolutely dug us out of so many holes. So yeah,
I justified my selection?
I think so.
That's what he said. He said after the Croatia game when he scored the winner, he's like, the guy was like, have you justified your selection? And he looked around at the crowd and celebrated. He's like, have I justified my selection? He just scoffed and he's like, yeah. Winning goal against Croatia, winning goal against Slovakia or Slovenia, scored against Denmark in the semi-final, which counted as an own goal in the end. Contributed in the Germany win after scoring the first goal, I would say, against Germany. So Raheem Sterling, for my opinion, has been one of England's greatest ever players, getting us to the highest of heights that we've seen since 1966. He's also been one of the best players in the last 10 years for England, amongst Harry Kane, amongst John Stones, and amongst Jordan Pickford, respectively, because we all can remember that monstrosity against Iceland. And even though it's the international break, you still kind of get excited with a lot of these players coming in. But Raheem Sterling isn't in the England squad this time around, which I think is quite embarrassing from Gareth Southgate standard. If Calvin Phillips gets game time, if Maguire gets game time, but Raheem Sterling, who's getting back to his best form, is getting omitted from the side. I personally find that embarrassing from Gareth Southgate's point of view, because it's one rule for some and one rule for others. But Raheem Sterling is the one that kind of Gareth bailed out Gareth Southgate's job after so many times. I said Gareth Bale, but you know how I say Bale, as in like Gareth Bale. So anyone listening, you should know that by now, and the boys know it as well. But Gareth Southgate's been bailed out by Raheem Sterling so many times, especially at Euro 2020, especially in the Nations League as well, getting to the I think it's a playoff game they got in the third place position they got. But Yeah, not happy with Gareth Southgate, not happy bunny with that one, but good shout there with Raheem Sterling. Did you say he was your starting one, Lewis?
Yeah, he's starting for me.
And who's going to be benching and who's going to be sold for you?
So I think Rashford's going to be on the bench for me, and unfortunately, Sonny is going to go. I know he's a 100 club member, but I'm all about winning. Unfortunately,
Fuming.
he's won
Fuming.
nothing. He's won absolutely
He's
nothing.
done absolutely nothing, Son Heung-min. It's insane.
He's won nothing. So ultimately, I'm all about winning. And yeah, sorry, Sonny. Individual accolades is all you'll get, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, he's the captain of Tottenham Hotspur, but Travis, it felt like he was the captain of your heart then as well, saying he's the best ever, your favourite ever Tottenham player. Where do you stand on start bench sell from your point of view, Travis? And reaction to Lewis's one as well, of course.
Yeah, couple of things just quickly before I get into it. Just wanted to correct a couple of the stats on Son in the Premier League. I'm wondering if you've seen his Tottenham stats rather than Premier League stats. But in the Premier League, he's made 272 appearances, 106 goals, 52 assists. Don't mean to call you out, but
no, I'd rather you do. I can edit it later, so it's fine. Don't worry about
yeah, just wanted to be accurate more than anything.
No, just repeat that for the audio so I can get that.
It's 272 Premier League appearances for Son, 106 goals and 52 assists.
Nicely done.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to comment on about Sterling is you mentioned how he's in the squad, but he's not in the squad, but Phillips and Maguire are. He's not going to play instead of Maguire. They're not going to put him centre back or CDM.
But even with centre backs, you can go for someone else there. With CDM, you can go for James Ward-Prowse as well. I
totally 100% agree that Phillips and Maguire should be nowhere near the squad.
Sterling should be on the starting sheet for me personally.
I don't know. I think if you look at the players who are in the attacking area of the pitch in that squad, I don't think you can argue that over the last 12 months, Sterling's been better than any of them.
I mean, over the last 12 months, Maguire shouldn't be anywhere near the England side, and neither should Calvin Phillips.
Agreed, but it's a separate issue for me. I think Sterling. I love him. I love Sterling, but Saka, Rashford, Kane, Foden, Eze. Can you say that he's been better than any of those players over the last 12 months? I don't think so. Maybe in the next 12 months, he might get back into the squad, but I don't disagree with this exclusion at this point in time.
It's just because I always go on to Gareth Southgate because he's always said since his beginning, he's always going to pick players based on form.
Yeah, that's true. And he's always said he'll pick players who he trusts as well. And Sterling has never played badly for England while Southgate's been in charge. I mean, there's been
El Racismo. That's what I say from Gareth Southgate.
Yeah. There's been times where I think Kane has not stood up to be counted for England. He's perhaps not, the Euros group stages, for example. I don't think he scored a goal in the groups. He only really come to life in the knockouts. And then Sterling carried us through that period. And there were periods in Southgate's tenure where, like you say, 100% agree Sterling's kept his job. If you are going off form, maybe he shouldn't be in there, but it's a debate for another day, I guess. In regards to the start bench sell, Lewis, I'm fuming, mate. I'm completely in disagreement with you. Maybe it's bias, but I would be starting Son 100% every day of the week and twice on Sunday. The way I look at those three is Son has to start because he's the only world-class player out of those three. He's the only player who has ever been world-class out of those three, in my opinion. I think for as good as Sterling was at Man City, he never carried that City team on his back the way that Son has done at times, especially when Kane was injured.
So what about Marcus Rashford carrying Manchester United?
Yeah, I guess so. I just think Son did it to a better degree at times. I mean,
Marcus Rashford won a trophy last season. Son hasn't.
So. The Mickey Mouse Carabao Cup. It doesn't count really.
What?
No trophies count for Spurs then, if that's the case.
Well, exactly. We ain't got one.
You say carried them to what though? You say obviously Trav, he's carried them to, but carried them to what? No, it's not all
about accolades though, is it? I mean, for example, is Alexander Butner a better Premier League player than Steven Gerrard because he's won a Premier League and Gerrard hasn't? For me, trophies are obviously massive. Of course they are. But I don't think you can say he's not a world-class player or Sterling or Rashford are better than him just because he hasn't won a trophy. It's not his fault he plays for Tottenham. I think we could have Messi, Haaland, Ronaldo, all in their prime as a front three for Tottenham, and we still wouldn't have won a trophy somehow. It's just the
I
Tottenham
wouldn't say that.
curse.
Look at Messi at Inter Miami. He's balling out there as well, scoring every other game.
The difference is Inter Miami haven't got the Tottenham curse when it comes to trophies. There's just something about the club which means we would just repel them.
It's a good answer. It's a good answer.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I could talk all day defending players who get labelled as not as good as others because they've not won trophies. It baffles me that you can rate a player's ability on how many trophies they've won. It all depends on the team and the timing and all this sort of stuff. But for me, like I say, Son, I think, is the only player out of the three who's ever been world class, in my opinion. I think I'd really struggle for who I'm benching and who I'm selling, though. It's just a gut feeling I'm going to go Sterling. I'm going to bench Sterling and sell Rashford, I think. My feeling is with Sterling that he's had a longer period of consistency. I think Rashford has had period. I mean, last season, Rashford, he looked like the best player in the world for a little while. Rashford, he was just unstoppable, but we don't see that all the time, and we haven't consistently seen that during his time at United, whereas Sterling has always been, I think, a very, very consistent performer until he's joined Chelsea. But who can you look at Chelsea over the last 12 months since he's joined and say they've been fantastic? So for me, I'm going to start Heung-min Son. I'm going to bench Raheem Sterling, and I'm going to sell Marcus Rashford.
Nicely done. It's looking like a biased one from all three of us, I would say.
I did think that was going to be the case, to be fair.
We're all going to back our boys, and I don't blame us at all. I'm definitely going to be starting Marcus Rashford on this one. So Marcus Rashford is one of the best clutch players I've seen at Manchester United since probably Wayne Rooney, I would say, in my opinion as well. Marcus Rashford has scored 28 goals against the Premier League Big Six since his debut in 2016 against Arsenal, scoring 2 goals against the Gunners at Old Trafford in his Premier League debut as well. He is someone who, when we see him play in his best position on the left wing, where he was played by Jose Mourinho at first, that was when you see Marcus Rashford shine. You see him flourish. If I can recall you back to the game against Liverpool, against a team that we never really win in modern times, and we beat Liverpool 2-1 at that time because Marcus Rashford's playing off the left and taking on defenders one-on-one. And he is one of the best one-on-one merchants I can see in the Premier League because he can actually do it properly, unlike players on our other wing, which just want to turn back and pass to their fullback, which is quite embarrassing in my point of view as well. His precision, his poise on the ball is something that a lot of players will aspire to be like in the future as well. And with Marcus Rashford as a striker, as kind of Travis alluded to, his inconsistency has been quite bad, and I blame the inconsistency not due to the change of managers or change of systems or whatever it is. It's due to the change of position. And unfortunately, Marcus Rashford is a Man United academy player, and when you're an academy player from Man United, you're expected to play in multiple positions to learn the role of a striker, of a midfielder, and as a defender. That's how a lot of players come up growing through the academy. Axel Tuanzebe coming up playing as a right back, centre back, defensive mid. Scott McTominay being a defensive mid, attacking mid, centre back. Marcus Rashford grew up being a right winger, striker, and a left winger, and he also played as a goalkeeper when he was younger as well, Marcus Rashford. But now he's kind of matured and he's kind of filled out his body in a way. Left wing is his position. So as we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, if Anthony becomes a he who shall not be named part 2 for Manchester United, I would hate to see Marcus Rashford start as a right winger. Play Pellistri there, play Mason Mount there, for example. Anyone but Marcus Rashford. Play their best players in their best position. And for me, if you play Marcus Rashford in his best position at left wing, you get the best of these 3 players because he can bring it to the table. He can lead players forward. He can bring that clutch performances. But unfortunately, like we said about Bruno Fernandes last week, Travis, he's surrounded by a bunch of duds in his team. That's embarrassing from Man United, like we said at the beginning of the podcast. But I'll back my boy and I'll start Marcus Rashford on this one. Benching, because we're doing it over their careers, I'm going to go for Raheem Sterling. It might be a bit of English bias there, but I think Raheem's actually, yeah, it's a bias because I don't like Heung-min Son because he dived after the Scott McTominay thing, and I'm not a fan of that. That's why it's a bias. But benching Raheem Sterling on this one because I think he's a fantastic player, and I think we will see 2-3 good seasons from Raheem Sterling as well. Remember, he started playing Premier League football at 17 years old for Liverpool, which is insane. But I do have to shout out Heung-min Son because we have never really seen, besides Park Ji-sung, besides Park Ji-sung, we've never really seen a South Korean footballer come to European football and consistently play quality football. And Heung-min Son has definitely outshone Park Ji-sung, even without the trophies. I do have to admit that. Unfortunately, I have to admit that. Put my hands off that. He's outshone Ji-sung Park in being probably the greatest ever Korean footballer we have seen in our lifetime. And Heung-min Son can put his accolades wherever they can at the end of the year, his individual accolades, which would be great. Top scorer in the Premier League a couple of seasons ago. Realistically speaking, he should be on fire working with James Maddison this season. If he gets another striker in January, he will be even better going forward. But I'm not going to forgive Heung-min Son for the against Man United. That was embarrassing for me. But yeah, starting Marcus Rashford, benching Raheem Sterling, and I'm selling Heung-min Son. But high praise to all three of them because they're very respectable professionals in world football as well, which is great. Next part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about, well, it's basically Scout Hamz, but this is where I get to ask both of you guys, just because I want to, for the sake of it. Are there any young players across Europe that we should be watching out for this season? We've done it every week so far this season, and we did it last season as well. Unfortunately, Kavica Kvaratskhelia was one last season, and he blew up. I've seen Darwin Núñez over the years. When I spoke about him, he's blowing up as well. Lewis, I'm going to ask you. I know you're big on your European football, and I know you're big on your Wonder Kids as well. Is there a player that you think will actually blow up this season, rather than the Champions League, Europa League, somewhere in the Premier League we've not even seen yet? Anyone in particular?
Yeah, so there's a few ballers out there at the minute. I'd say in terms of players out in Europe, I'd say keep an eye out on Monaco midfielder. He can play out wide. He can play just behind the striker in the 10 role. His name's Elise Ben Seguir. He's 18 years old. He's fantastic, honestly. This guy is everything I love about football. He's get you off your seat football. He's exciting every time he gets the ball. He's tricky. He likes to beat a man. He's so raw, where Hamz, you'll see it from young Ronaldo, where he has no fear of going past the player. And again, it's everything I love in football. And I think that he'll be one of the next big players that Monaco sell down the line, maybe in 3 or 4 years. But like I said, he's only 18. And someone else, I would say off the top of my head, Xavi Simons or Xavi Simons. He's on loan from Paris Saint-Germain to RB Leipzig. I'm sure
we've been raving about him this season, and it's great to see him in his element at RB Leipzig. It's insane to watch how talented this boy is at such a young age. And there's going to be a big rivalry this season for who's going to get the better stats this season, with Florian Wirtz, with Jamal Musiala, with Xavi Simons. And Xavi Simons, I think personally, will take all of them on. I definitely think Florian Wirtz will do more, but Xavi Simons will take them on all the way on his loan deal at RB Leipzig, which will be incredible as well. Sorry to interject, but that's what I have to say about Xavi Simons.
Yeah, he's great. Honestly, every time I've watched him, I've seen a lot of highlights from him last year in the Eredivisie, where he was putting up some big numbers. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's Eredivisie," but it's a great league for young players to get out there, play every week, play at big clubs, but big clubs in Holland. I know an example, Mason Mount, when he went on loan to Vitesse, and people can scrutinise Chelsea's relationship with Vitesse all they want, but it's made so many careers for players down the line, maybe not in the Premier League, but throughout football. And I think personally it's a great place for him to develop. So he's took that on his shoulders. He's now gone to the next level, and Paris was so clever in getting him back, because even if Leipzig decided to buy him for, let's say, 40, 50 million, they'll have a sell-on clause for if Leipzig sell him probably for half of it. So it's great for him, and he's very much put PSG on the back foot and been very much in control of his own future, and had Paris sweating rather than him the other way around. So yeah, very excited to see how he turns out. And Elise Ben Seguir in Liga for your European football ones.
Nicely done. I'm going to go for Mohamed Kudus, the new West Ham signing. I'm going to go for Taiwo Awoniyi as well. Taiwo Awoniyi has been fantastic on his start to the second season at Nottingham Forest. Not so much of a youngster now, but neither is Mohamed Kudus in a way. They're both kind of good players to watch, and I'm looking forward to watching them. I just thought I'd shout them out on this week's podcast. But one young player from France I want to talk to everyone about is El Yawahi. I did a video about him earlier this summer, being at Montpellier, scoring 4 goals against Lyon in a 5-4 defeat for Montpellier. Has now joined RC Lens, and they'll be in the Champions League, and they will be in Arsenal's group as well. So El Yawahi, hopefully you can turn up and be another young wonder kid breaking onto the scene in the Champions League, and I'm all for it, and I'm all looking forward to it as well. Travis, have we missed any wonder kids for this week from your point of view? Have you got any AFC crew by any chance?
Probably not any that are going to make a major mark on European football just
yet.
Not yet. But if I'm talking about players to get excited about, young players, I know people are going to get sick about me talking about Tottenham so much, but I like to talk about what I know about. And I think Destiny Udogie is going to be a very, very exciting prospect this season. Just
Not
off the
Japhet
first,
Tenganga on loan. No.
nah, I think he's pretty much done at Tottenham, to be fair. But no, Udogie, I think I'm going to go big here on Udogie. I'm going to back him. I think by the end of this season, I think he'll be considered one of the best 3 left backs in the world.
In the world? What?
In the world, yeah.
Huh?
Genuinely, I'm that confident in this guy's ability. If you watch him, the way that he suits Ange's system and the way that he's just fit into it like a glove, and he's slid right into Premier League football like he's been playing there for years. He's so young. There's so much good that you can say about him in the way that he started the season and started his Tottenham career. And all I can say is I'm so glad that we sent him out on loan last season. Sorry, when we first originally signed him. We signed him last summer, loaned him back to Udinese, and he's come back into the team this season. The reason I'm glad that he went on loan last season is he would have been ruined under Conte. I don't think that he'd have got a look in.
Like Jed Spence.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Spence didn't even play a game, bless him. But yeah, I think, yeah, it'd have been
He came on off the bench against Man United because I saw him and I was like, oh, it's pretty decent. Never played again for the whole season, which is embarrassing.
Yeah, and I think he's one that, his days already look numbered at Tottenham very shortly after they've begun. But, Udogie, I think, is going to be an absolute superstar. He's got all the tools to be, one of the best fullbacks in world football. I just wanted to just follow up on someone you just mentioned as well, Taiwo Awoniyi. What a player. I love that guy. I'm such a big fan. We've obviously just signed Brennan Johnson from Nottingham Forest, and I think we've actually made a mistake in the Forest attacker that we've bought. I think we should have gone for Awoniyi. He's a real goal scorer, so strong, quick, talented, really technical as well. His ability on the ball is fantastic. The way that he sat Onana down against Man United. Sorry to bring it up, Hamz.
No, it was excellent. It was the faint dummy was excellent as well. I enjoyed it as well watching it back. I was like, damn, that's our number one goalkeeper just fainting like that. It's insane.
Yeah, he had a great first season in English football last season. He really fit into the Premier League well. And I do think without him, Forest would have gone down last year.
Him and Brennan Johnson. Johnson and Gibbs White. They were the survival attackers.
100%. I'm really glad you mentioned him because I don't see really too many people in the sort of traditional media talking about how good he's actually been.
Because they're racist.
He's a phenomenal player, and I'm a huge fan. And I wish he played for Tottenham.
Victor Osimhen, Boniface from Bayern Leverkusen, and Taiwo Awoniyi, 3 amazing Nigerian attackers that we've got. Really excited to watch in the African Cup of Nations if they qualify as well. So got to watch out for January when the tournament starts, because that could be a very fun attack to watch. And yes, we are already prepping, like Andre Onana, we are already prepping for the African Cup of Nations in January, which will be great. But yeah, final topic of this week's podcast. We normally do a European match review, Lewis, on this part of the season, but because there's international breaks, I'm not really going to talk about that. We are going to be talking about 2 European managers who are going to be chasing a title charge this season. So we're going to go to Germany and we're going to go to Italy. And Lewis, I'm going to ask you, because I know you've mentioned it to me off air beforehand about AC Milan. I'm going to talk about Inter Milan as well. But out of the 2 Milan clubs this season so far, who looks closer to actually competing with Napoli so far this season in a title race and potentially winning back the Scudetto? AC Milan or Inter Milan? What do you think, Lewis?
I'd say off current form, it has to be Inter. Just because they've got that experience of more players have come back. They've not really lost big apart from Brozovic, and Lukaku wasn't starting games last year anyway, so they've not exactly lost a massive component from the team. And I just think that Inzaghi as a manager is very resolute. They've not conceded a goal yet, Inter as well. They've won every game without conceding, so that's very impressive. That's
very underrated from Inzaghi as well. It's the fact that he got to the Champions League final last season and is not even being considered as another favourite in the Champions League this season, which shows that people really don't rate Simone Inzaghi's tactics and the style of play at Inter Milan, which I think is embarrassing.
Yeah, it's mad. And the thing is, what also is mad on the subject really is that Inter still have Lautaro Martinez, who we speak about world class. I think this guy is world class, and I think that he could easily go to a top Premier League club and not look out of place playing in a 2 or a 1. And I just think it's a miracle that Inter still have him. But AC Milan, Hamz have done some class business, I think, in the past few years. I think Olivier Giroud is just a player that's timeless and a player that I would have at Chelsea tomorrow. I think Giroud could do an actual massive job at Man United. Don't know what you reckon about that, Hamz. But yeah, I think that it'll be very interesting with the Milan clubs. It's very hard for Napoli to replicate what they did last year. They lost the manager. They've lost so much of the actual identity of the team. They've lost Kim Min-jae, who's obviously at Bayern Munich now as well. So it'll be very interesting and maybe redemption for the Milan clubs.
Yeah, I mean, one thing on Giroud as well, it feels like over his career, all he's ever done is gone into a team and done a job and not been appreciated for what he's done. He's the all-time leading French goal scorer, overtaking Thierry Henry, which is insane. Mbappe will surely catch him up. But for the time being, at this moment of speaking now, Olivier Giroud is the highest goal scorer in French national history. And all he's ever been for a lot of clubs is a plan B, unfortunately. Plan B when he moved to Arsenal, replacing Van Persie. Plan B at Chelsea when Diego Costa kind of left as well. Plan B at AC Milan when Zlatan Ibrahimovic was injured as well. And now their mainstay. And it goes to show that, well, Divock really couldn't replace him. They've got another couple of younger strikers in, and they're still not replacing him because they can't take out Olivier Giroud. And Travis, you spoke about AC Milan a couple of weeks ago as well. Can you really see some of their new signings kind of push their team forward? We've seen Yunus Musa move from Valencia to AC Milan this season. We've seen Christian Pulisic also move from Chelsea to AC Milan. Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well. I'm not going to say the Chelsea rejects team in Italy because that's Vitesse in Holland as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing AC Milan. How about you, Travis, from your point of view?
Yeah, I'm feeling inclined to disagree with Lewis, actually. I'm thinking that out of the two Milan sides, I think AC will actually be closer to the Scudetto this season than Inter. I think Inter, just looking at it, they've lost Onana, Brozovic, they've lost Milan Skriniar as well. That's three absolutely huge players. Right, I mean,
they've got De Vrij on. No, they got Acerbi on a permanent. They got Jan Sommer in on a permanent as well. I don't know who they got to replace Brozovic though, because that's going to be a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've made a couple of signings, but I just think that I mean, you mentioned Acerbi. I think Pavard's probably going to be the Skriniar replacement more so, but I don't think the players who they've replaced those players with will be as good. I don't think Pavard's as good as Skriniar. I don't think Sommer's as good as Onana. I think AC will be closer. You mentioned the players they've signed. They seem to be gelling really well. That being said, the two teams that are top of the league currently are the two Milan sides. So, and they both won every game. So it's going to be a really interesting one. And I'd like to see how they both get on throughout the season, really. But my prediction would be Milan will be a bit closer.
Definitely. I'm still happy with this Inter Milan prediction. I still think Simeone may have the tactical advantage over Stefan Pioli over the course of the season. They're both in Champions League football. They're both going to be competing on all fronts. I think the strength and depth for Inter Milan may be slightly better in terms of quality than with AC Milan, because we saw last season as well, when they lost Rafael Leao, they didn't have a plan B. Their plan B was Yunus Messias and Brahim Diaz, and Brahim Diaz has now gone to Real Madrid again, but it's got to be, if Christian Pulisic settles well, if Chukwueze settles well for AC Milan, then we will see a lot more quality moving forward in the attacking final third for AC Milan. But yeah, that was on Italy. Now we're going to be talking about Germany. And we're only going to be talking about one or two teams with this one, because Bayern Munich are obviously looking like the main favourites. But RB Leipzig definitely challenging them so far this season, winning the cup against Bayern Munich earlier this season as well. Danny Olmo scoring a hat-trick. Xavi Simons balling out as well. Timo Werner looking back into his better form with Lewis Openda. And Lewis, I wanted to kind of ask you, is there a chance that RB Leipzig could challenge RB Leipzig and Brian Leverkusen on top as well, but could RB Leipzig challenge Bayern Munich for a title charge and potentially continue this Harry Kane curse going forward?
The Kane curse. I think that will be gone.
It follows him everywhere.
Yeah, I think that will be gone probably around May. I think that Bayern are just ridiculous in that league. They still to this day handpick every other team's best player, and Dortmund were basically presented every opportunity last year to be like, go and win the league. Go on, you can do it. You're so close. Bayern have bottled at every opportunity they've gone through. Massive crisis where they've sat the manager in Nagelsmann, and everyone's saying, should they have brought Tuchel in? And now there's a mini crisis with Tuchel. But Bayern can go through all that turmoil and still just win the Bundesliga on autopilot. And I personally don't think that they can challenge. However, Hamz, I think that they can be the best of the rest. And what I mean by the best of the rest is they can finish second and they can compete for that automatic Champions League squad. We spoke about Leipzig before with Xavi Simons. Again, I watch so much French football, especially on a Sunday when I've got not a lot to do.
Shout out TNT Sports.
Yeah,
Place
man.
to be.
100%. And like Apenya last year was incredible for Lens. They for anyone who doesn't watch French football or isn't really that asked, for context, Lens finished 1 point behind PSG last year. And that's why ultimately Christophe Gaultier lost his job. And I bet not many people know that. So Lucas Apenya is a player that can play in a 2, he can play in a 1, and he was incredible for them last year. And
Rapid player.
Down to the ground, honestly. What a player he is. And a lot of gems coming out of France at the minute. Keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I mentioned about El Yawahi earlier in the podcast as well. Now replacing Lewis Openda at RC Lens going forward. But Travis, we spoke glowingly about Xabi Alonso previously on the podcast as well. Just to finalize on this podcast, we won't go into any other countries because it's international break and we all kind of need a break as well going forward. Realistically speaking, is this Xabi Alonso's best squad with still Patrick Schick to come back into the side? Victor Boniface is having an amazing start to the season. Granit Xhaka's settled to Bayern Leverkusen like a duck to water. And Alejandro Grimaldo, moving from Benfica to Bayern Leverkusen, looked like a sideways step instead of an upward step. But he looks like he's fantastic in this 3-4-3 system for Bayern Leverkusen. Can we expect more from them this season, challenging, especially because they're only going to be in the Europa League and not in the Champions League this season?
Yeah, I agree. I think that they've lost a few big players over the summer. Obviously, Diaby we've talked about being one of them, but they have made a few good signings that you've just mentioned there. I do agree with Lewis, though. I do think that Leipzig are going to be the best of the rest. Traditionally, Dortmund have been the best of the rest in Germany, but I think looking at the squads, I feel that Leipzig's is a lot more capable. I think if I just look at the two squads sort of side by side, I see a lot more quality running through Leipzig's compared to Dortmund's. I think they could struggle really, Dortmund, this season. Leipzig look good. Leverkusen, like you mentioned, look really good, and they have an exciting manager to boot as well. We could be looking at a difficult season for Dortmund. I could look very silly at the end of the season if they finish second or win the league or whatever. But I think that, completely agree with Lewis. RB Leipzig will be the best of the rest.
No, nicely done there as well. But yeah, no, great podcast, everyone. Great to have this amazing conversation on football, and not just English football, but European football and world football, respectively, this week as well. We're going into our international break with a couple of weeks off for all of us, which will be quite nice as well. We've been delivering daily content, which has been great for everyone to watch and everyone to produce. I'm really happy everyone's enjoying it so far as well. Really looking forward to seeing what Lewis has got on his cookie podcast. And Lewis, now's your time. Tell us what we've got upcoming on That's the Way the Cookie Crumbles so far this season.
Yeah, so we've got quite a few exciting things in the bank. I'm not gonna give away the farm at the minute, but we've already done some exciting interviews over the summer. If you want to check a podcast that doesn't really have a time limit on it, I did a podcast with the co-founder of Classic Football Shirts. So if you want to go and check that out, you can go and do that. And I think that just keep an eye out. We're nearly at our 200th episode of the Cookie Pod, so we're gonna get something excited for that episode. And yeah, just excited to be doing it. Very excited to carry on coming on this podcast because it's always very fun, always exciting to chop it up with you guys. And yeah, thank you for having me on, more importantly.
No, you're very welcome. I still need you to come to a football game before the winter period comes around. So hopefully we can get that sorted, which will be quite nice and quite enjoyable as well. But I'm looking forward to it. And did the co-founder of Classic Football Shirts hook you up with that new Chelsea shirt, by the way?
Unfortunately not, mate. The club rinsed me for this one because there's a massive hectic thing about it. Obviously, with it having no sponsor, the home and the away shirt at the minute, a lot of people think we are going to have a sponsor before our third shirt comes out. So I'm desperately trying to get them all because I think down the line, to say a massive club has gone through so many games without a sponsor is just mental to say in the modern day. And I personally think it makes every kit look better when you don't have a massive corporatization over there, whether that be a sleeve sponsor or an actual front of shirt sponsor. So yeah, the idea is to get them all as soon as I can and pay an absolute fortune for them, unfortunately.
That's why I sit with the camera just like that, so it looks quite nice, aesthetically pleasing. And then when I put the camera then like that, just Ivonic, I can only do that, which ain't too bad as well. But no, it's quite good, and I'm looking forward to what you've got coming up with your couple of interviews, and I'm looking forward to seeing who you've got on, which will be good fun. And obviously with your topics that you talk about, they're always quite enjoyable. Travis kind of stole one of your topics and brought it last week. Basically on the Cookie podcast, they have a bet of the week. So Travis then stole it and adapted it to my religious beliefs and called it. Yeah, you didn't call it anything, did you, Travis? You just said, "Oh yeah, we'll have a wager."
We called it a wager, didn't we? Yeah,
we called it a wager, and whatever happens, I'm still losing because I'm buying someone a football shirt. It just depends who I'm buying a football shirt for. So when I'm back from my international break, and when we're all back from our international break, I'm gonna set Travis up for a wager of his own, which will be quite fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing it, which will be good fun. But no,
wager. I love a wager, and I love that you guys are doing it for a football shirt. So if anyone's feeling froggy, we'll see it. We'll see how many shirts we can get on the go, and hopefully we can have a game of football for a shirt or something like that. That might be fun. A game of football.
Foot golf, our podcast versus your podcast for a football shirt.
Geez, that would be good. It'd be a case of actually getting some of the members of our pod actually up and around the course, really. But that's the most challenging thing.
It will happen. We'll hire like a golf buggy or something. We'll just like skirt around. It will be good fun. It'll be quite nice.
Yeah, but no, thank you again. Like I said, nice one again for having us on. It's always fun to come on here. It's always exciting to talk about something that's not just Premier League based and actually talk to some people that actually know extensive European footy knowledge. So thank you again for having me on. And Trav, always a pleasure. Never a chore to see you, mate.
Lovely words, Lewis. Nice to see you as well, mate. Thank you.
Travis, I told you, everyone loves you. It's great. It's fantastic. This is really, really good.
What can I say?
They just don't love your football club, so it's all good. It's you win some and you lose some.
Neither do I. So we've got that in common.
Yeah, it's true. But everyone, thank you very much for listening. Over the next 2 weeks, I'll be on one of my European football adventures. I'm not sure where I'm going yet, but I'm looking forward to sharing my journey with you. Do follow us on our social medias for where I'm going and what I've got going on. I do not know, but I know I'm going to enjoy it. And I know for a fact you'll enjoy it. Thank you, everyone, for following and for helping us with our journey so far as well. Over the next 2 weeks, we've got 2 pre-recorded podcasts, one with a journalist from an upcoming footballing country and one with a La Liga footballer as well. So stick around and stay tuned for that one. Everyone, enjoy your evening. Take care, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.